In previous episodes, I have told you about my friend Molly. She was the pilot buddy wife that wanted an electric car. I tried to get her to get a Hyundai Kona EV. She looked at it and said, "Ugh, I don't want that." Then I tried to get her to get a Porsche Taycan, but she said, "That's a track car." Well, apparently the world is changing because it's no longer Tesla, box, or track car. Now there's an option for an S Class. Let's kick things off today with what this vehicle is not. It is not an S Class with an electric propulsion system shoehorned into it. Rather, it's a completely new architecture, one optimized for an electric vehicle. However, they do something very similar to what Porsche does with a Taycan, where that too is a completely new platform, yet they take the learning and engineering from chassis control systems in internal combustion engine vehicles, something they've been doing for 50 plus years. Mercedes has been doing it for 100 plus years, and they apply that to an electric vehicle that still has to go down a road. So in this case, they take some of the learning from the W223 S Class, specifically the subassembly for the chassis control systems. Like in the rear, there is an option for either 4.5 degrees or 10 degrees of rear wheel steering, but then there's the Airmatic with the adjustable dampers. Think about that in a gas car. When you have adjustable dampers that are controlled with air, you might hear that. So they had to make some adjustments to the chassis control systems to make them work in an electric vehicle where you won't have the sound of an internal combustion engine to cover the air compressor. So that's one of the big changes in the suspension system. Then there's the propulsion system itself. There's two different flavors on offer. There's the 450 Plus, which is the extended range model. That one is a single motor in the rear, so it's rear wheel drive. That one, 329 horsepower and 406 pound-feet of torque. However, there is the 580. That one's kind of the big dog. That's a dual motor, 516 horsepower and 611 pound-feet of torque. In terms of translating that to performance figures, both have the same VMAX, 130 miles an hour. However, the 0 to 60, that changes pretty significantly. And keep in mind, they didn't tell me the weight of this vehicle, but I'm thinking it's well north of 5,500 pounds. The EQS 450 Plus, the extended range, the one we are looking at today, that has a 0 to 60 of 5.1 seconds. The EQS 580, that has a 0 to 60 of 4.1 seconds. Okay, so yes, there is a rear-wheel drive and there's an all-wheel drive flavor on offer. However, a huge hidden vice here. In either case, it is unlike the Porsche Taycan. It is a single-speed transmission, not one of these dual speeds like Porsche came up with to make that car work on a track. This is designed to do what a Tesla is designed to do, not the Plaid. It's always a challenge to try to convey the size of a vehicle that one has never seen before using a camera. This one's even more difficult because of the unique design and the architecture of the vehicle. But to give you a good idea of what this is in terms of size, one needs to think about an S Class or a BMW 7 Series. The wheelbase on this is 126.4 inches. The wheelbase of an S Class is 126.6 inches. The wheelbase of a BMW 7 Series is 126 inches. So even though it looks shorter than those vehicles, it's about the same size in wheelbase as well as length. So this effectively being the first ever fully electric S Class, we got to discuss the currency of an electric vehicle, and that would be the battery and the charge times. The only information they've shared with me is the battery for the extended range model, the 450 Plus. That is a 107.8 kilowatt hour battery. Now, in terms of charging architecture, it is significantly faster than other EVs we have driven, 400 volt architecture. Now that is about half what the Porsche Taycan is. That's an 800 volt architecture system. In terms of charge times, what does that translate to? Well, on a level 2 charger like I have here in the hangar, no, not this one, 11.25 hours. But then level 3, up to 80%, 3.5 hours. And that brings us to the obvious question, what's the range? And here I have to give you a little asterisk. You see, this car, it is literally held together by chewing gum and spit. It's one of these cars that's been flown over from Germany, and it's not like Porsche where they fly over a car with number plates and you and I can go screaming through the canyons. This is a car that has a babysitter from Germany with it. He is always near the car, even when I was filming. So this is a car we can't really do testing. More importantly, the US EPA can't do testing. Mercedes has tested a couple of engineering mules with some trips over to Munich, and they've gotten on the European cycle up to about 480 miles of range with the extended range car. So that's my long-winded way of saying we're going to have to put a pin in this part of the discussion and wait for the car to come to the US, and at least the US EPA tests it, or you and I get to test it in some real-world driving. Inside, I would argue it's a bigger departure than the first Mercedes Benz S Class that has a full electric propulsion system, and here is why. Something called a Hyperscreen. It's kind of like the screens we saw in previous Mercedes where it's one screen, but really it's broken up into two. However, this one is 3 screens that make up a 56-inch wide screen. And it's kind of curved, also it's kind of concave. So it's got this very unique organic look to it. In front of you, there is an LCD 12.3-inch screen. Then the passenger has their own 12.3-inch OLED screen. Moving to the main event, that would be the center screen, which is a separate screen that's also OLED, and there's 2 different flavors here. In the 450 Plus, there is a 12.8-inch OLED screen, and the design is different from what you see here. That's more along the lines of what we saw in the S Class. However, they changed some of the trim behind it. This is a 17.7-inch OLED screen, and it's fitted as standard to the 580s. It's on offer in the 450 Plus. Aside from the larger screen that's more organic and rather flash, why is this important? Well, it gave the Mercedes engineers and the UX designers the opportunity to add an additional layer to the Mercedes-Benz user experience. And what they've done here is they've brought together artificial intelligence with some contextual menus. So the idea is to be able to give you the same experience as if it's your iPhone or iPad, where it kind of gives you suggestions based on where you are. So if you're driving down the road at a specific time, it gives you directions to go to that specific place. Or if it knows you make a specific phone call at a specific time to get your honey-do list, it will provide that information at the time it's needed. And what they do is they have the map as the basis of the menu. So that's like the root layer. And then everything else, like the phones or the entertainment that would come up at predetermined times, those are tiles throughout the UX. So this is a bit odd and unlike other first attempts at an EV that we have discussed in previous episodes, in that it's a combination of like a Mac tower and a LEED certified house if both had wheels. Like, for example, this thing has 8 CPU cores, 24 gigabytes of RAM, 350 sensors that monitor, yes, speed, distance, acceleration, light, precipitation, and then there is a car-to-X communication system, so it can communicate with other vehicles that have similar systems to take traffic and other data information inside the car to make adjustments. So you can kind of see why this could be considered a rolling computer, which of course would mean there would have to be batteries. And that is the only aspect of the entire project. They did not reinvent the entire wheel. The batteries are packaged exactly where you'd expect them to be, between the wheels. However, how they manufacture the vehicle as well as the batteries, that's something unique. The vehicle itself is manufactured in the same plant that they manufacture the S Class, Sindelfingen. However, the batteries are also manufactured in Germany by Mercedes at their Untertürkheim plant. Now, if you've been following along thus far, the batteries sit from here to here. There's an electric motor there and sometimes there, and the computers are everywhere. So it would stand to reason there's a frunk, right? Wrong. Why? Because there's a HEPA filter, a large one that sits underneath that very cool-looking clamshell hood. And the folks at Mercedes tell me that it acts like a filtration system for the air inside the vehicle that can make it cleaner than your wife's yoga studio before anybody comes in for the day and does any yoga. Okay, so enough of the tech and the EV propulsion system. Let's get to the business of this being an incredibly important car. And no, not just because it's the first ever fully electric S Class, rather because it's an S Class. And the history of an S Class, At least from a technology and engineering point of view, they have always led the luxury car industry, and really for that matter, the car industry, for the following 10 years after their introduction. Here, the design is kind of setting the stage for fully electric luxury cars. Here, they went in a completely different direction. You first saw it as a concept car in 2015, then we saw it again closer to production at the Frankfurt Auto Show in 2019. And what they call this is a one-bow design. It's not that mono-volume look where it's a blob on wheels. This does have some shape to it. You can see it in the sides of the vehicle. You can see it with the way the clamshell hood works, and even the way the fastback works, because they made a huge choice to go with a hatchback as opposed to a trunk, which translates well here. But putting aside the impact of the practicality of those decisions, there was another benefit, one that is not readily apparent, and that is the coefficient of drag, meaning how efficiently the car goes through the air, meaning how efficient it can operate under battery power. Here, it's kind of a huge step forward. To give you an idea, most cars you and I drive, not things like this, things more like that, it's like 0.29, 0.28 coefficient of drag is considered really good. This, it's otherworldly at 0.20. But as great of a design and technical achievement as that is, we still have the very obvious question: is it attractive? Does someone have to explain to you why it looks the way it does? And here, there is a resounding no to that question. This thing in person is incredibly attractive. And yeah, they could have went with this, oh, we have to make it look different because it's an EV. I would argue this is more attractive than the W223 S Class, and not in this ridiculous way. There are still plenty of organic shapes. The surfacing of this works incredibly well, better than most EVs we have seen that have come before it. Then I would argue the bigger success is the interior. And let's put aside the screen for a minute. The interior, yeah, most of it is lifted from the S Class, and that is to say a very good thing. Which brings us back to that Hyperscreen, and here I am going to shock you. I like this. I like this a lot. However, we do need to look at it from two different aspects. First, the design. Here, it is a major departure for interior design in that it's not a screen that is tacked on a dashboard or in a dashboard. It is the entire dashboard. It just isn't made of wood like back in the day when these cars were new. However, they've integrated all three of the different screens, and it works quite well in terms of design. And then they've got this wonderful pageantry with these turbofan vents off to each side. That brings us to the second issue, and that is the UX design, which brings us to the wish list. There are virtually no real buttons in this vehicle. There are no toggle switches. There are, I believe, no knobs whatsoever. Even the sunroof is touch sensitive to open it. So here, the only suggestion I am going to make in changing here, the design outside, stellar, love some of the tech here. Hopefully the fact that this is an electric vehicle, it will prove to be more reliable than other very complex German cars. However, the must change is, let's take some of the design that we put in those turbofan vents and make knobs for the HVAC system. Like, you've got the knobs rendered digitally. How about making them real knobs within that screen? It would look magnificent. Maybe put a couple of toggle switches down here where the start switch is. Maybe turn the start switch into a toggle switch. This way, it would really play up the design of the inside of the vehicle, but also make it much safer to operate. And this is the point of the episode where I turn this around to you guys to opine in the comments below, or via our social media, MotoManTV all one word, MotoManTV all one word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And with that, I do want to leave you with one more fact about the specific car we saw today. You see, this one is a limited production model, or will be a limited production model at the start of production. They're going to call it the Edition 1. This is a very similar trick they do with other Mercedes and AMG products, where they're going to have a limited unit of these Edition 1s, and this is the only one that will be on offer in this stunning medium blue metallic with the interior that's two-tone, kind of a light blue with a cream interior. You really couldn't tell it was medium blue metallic in the light in that sight. However, when you do see it in the right light, wow, does it pop. Until I see you in the next episode, bis später.